This is the ultimate beginner's guide to Fallout New Vegas. In this video, I will teach you everything you could possibly need to know to get started in this iconic RPG. Timestamps will be on screen now for all the different sections of the video, so you can more easily navigate between them. During character creation, you will get to choose your starting special stats. You have a total of 40 points to spread across the 7 different specials. Each of these attributes must be set at a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 10, but to figure out which you want to focus on, let's go over what each of them actually do. First up is Strength. This determines your starting carry weight. Each character has 150 carry weight to start with, plus an extra 10 points for every rank of Strength. This means a character with 1 Strength has 160 carry weight, while a character with 10 Strength has 250 points of carry capacity to work with. Additionally, the Strength stat will help you out with wielding weapons. Most of the weapons in the game have a minimum strength requirement in order to be able to handle them effectively. If you don't have enough strength, then you will lose accuracy with your guns, but how many points of strength you need is going to depend on the specific firearm you're using. The major impact strength has on weapons, however, is in the form of melee weapons. Every point of strength adds 2 points to the melee weapon's skill and half a point of base melee damage. This makes strength the most important stat for melee-based builds. Next up is Perception. Despite what the game initially says, this stat doesn't actually impact your accuracy, either inside or outside of VATS. It does impact your detection distance, however, which is how far away enemies will show up as red marks on your compass. The higher your perception, the sooner you can spot enemies. On top of this, it will also raise the energy weapons, lockpick, and explosive skills by 2 points per rank. Endurance primarily dictates the number of hit points you have. Your starting health pool will be equal to 100 plus 20 times your endurance level. If you only have 1 in endurance, then you'll only have 120 HP to work with, but with endurance maxed out, you'll instead have 300 health to work with. On top of this, endurance also determines your poison and radiation resistance. Each rank beyond the first adds 5% to poison resistance and 2% to rad resistance. Neither of these are too common in post-apocalyptic Nevada, but are still handy to have from time to time. In terms of the skills that endurance impacts, both survival and unarmed will increase by 2 points for each point of endurance. On to charisma now, often the dump stat for New Vegas players. Each rank of charisma improves companion damage and armor rating by 5%, making your followers up to 50% stronger than they normally would be. Besides this though, all charisma does is improve the social skills of speech and barter by 2 points per rank. Intelligence dictates how many skill points you earn per level up. The formula used for this is 10 plus half your intelligence level. This does mean you can earn half a skill point if at an odd numbered intelligence. What happens in this case is that you would alternate between rounding up and rounding down on each of your level ups. One level you might get 12 skill points to distribute, the next you'll get 13. As well as increasing the number of skill points you get on level up, it will also dictate your starting medicine, repair and survival skills, granting 2 points to each per rank of intelligence. The agility attribute primarily determines how many action points you have. Action points are used to target enemies inside of VATS. The more of them you have, the more shots you can get off. Besides this, the agility stat also impacts your draw, holster and reload speed. These changes won't typically be super noticeable, but can give you the edge in a close fight. On top of this, the skills boosted by agility are guns and sneak, with each increasing by 2 points per rank. Finally, we have luck. Each rank of this stat increases your critical hit chance by 1%, indirectly increasing your overall damage. On top of this, all your skills get improved by 1 for each odd rank of luck, meaning you can end up with a 5-point increase to every skill at 9 points of luck. As a final benefit of the stat, gambling on the strip casinos will go better for you with a high luck stat, and worse with a low luck stat. If you want to have an easy time breaking the casinos, then I'd recommend ensuring you have a luck of at least 7. Now that you know what all the different special stats do, I'll quickly go over how to increase them both temporarily and permanently. In terms of temporary changes to special, there's a fair few different ways they can be altered. As you take increasing rads, at every 200 points of build up you incur worse and worse special debuffs, and if you manage to end up with 1000 rads, then you'll instantly drop dead, so do try and avoid that. Chems and alcohol can also increase or sometimes decrease your special layout for a brief period of time, which can be handy in a pinch. If you're looking for a slightly longer period of increased special stats, then armour is probably your best bet. Most power armor will increase your strength and thereby your carry weight, but decrease your agility, and therefore you'll have fewer action points to work with. When it comes to permanent increases to special, there's really just a couple of options to go for. The first is Intense Training. This is a perk which can increase any of your special stats by a single point per rank. While this can be handy for a little bit of tweaking to your base stats, it will cost you a perk point each time, which are pretty limited in New Vegas. The other way to get a permanent increase is to head to the New Vegas Medical Clinic. This location, just slightly to the northeast of the Strip and Freeside, houses a doctor who sells implants for a real hefty price. If you've got the caps, you can pay to increase any of your special stats by a single point for one time only. However, you can only get as many implants as you have points in endurance. There's also 2 additional implants you can pick up, which provide you with additional armor and health regen. If you want to pick up every single one of these implants, then you're going to need to have 9 points of endurance, so do keep that in mind when picking your starting special. It's time to now go over all the skills in the game, which can be split up into 3 different groups: combat, support, and social. The combat skills are guns, energy weapons, explosives, melee weapons, and unarmed. These skills are all about improving your damage output with the various weapons in the game. The support skills are lockpick, science, repair, medicine, survival, and sneak. These skills can help you access more loot, keep your gear in good nick, and get you the best sort of healing possible. And finally, there are the social skills, barter and speech. These are exclusively used when conversing with NPCs, and can help conversations go more your way. I'll now briefly go over each and every one of these skills, starting with the combat ones. First up is guns, which impacts your damage and accuracy with ballistic weapons. If you're using pistols, rifles, or even heavy weapons like the minigun, then guns is the skill which determines how good you are with them. Energy weapons determine the overall damage and accuracy of all laser and plasma weapons in the game. These aren't as common as guns, but can be pretty powerful and fun to use. The explosive skill impacts how far you can throw grenades, and how damaging the explosion of them will be. Raising this skill will also make it a little easier to disarm mines, and improve some heavy explosive weapons like the missile launcher. Penultimate combat skill is melee weapons, which increases damage dealt with and damage blocked by all the different melee weapons in the game. These are things like sledgehammers, combat knives, and baseball bats. There are also some thrown melee weapons, such as the throwing spear, which means melee does have some range to it, albeit not a lot. Last of the combat skills is unarmed, which functions in basically the same way as melee weapons, but instead for punching weapons of the game. If you're wanting to use a ballistic fist or go around bare knuckle boxing, then unarmed is where you'll want to invest. Time to talk about the support skills now, starting with lockpick. This is a skill which allows you to open up lock containers by completing the lockpick minigame. Even with 0 skill points, you could still unlock a very easy lock, but for every rank above that you'll need an additional 25 points invested to be able to unlock them. Science works in the same way as lockpicking, but this time around for hacking into terminals. Every 25 points invested will not only unlock a new tier of terminal you can hack into, but also reduce the number of words showing up on screen, giving you a better chance at getting the password. Repair is up next, and this skill is used to fix up damaged weapons and armour. You repair items by sacrificing another of the same type. You can repair any of your items up to maximum condition no matter your repair skill, but the higher the skill is, the fewer items you will need to sacrifice. The first of the game's 2 healing skills is medicine. The higher this skill is, the more health stimpaks of all kinds will restore, and the more rads are cured with Radaway. If you'd rather gain your healing from food and drink, then survival is the skill for you. This skill serves as a multiplier for all the various effects that food and drink can give you. Not only does this mean getting better healing, but it also serves as a multiplier to any other effects of these consumables, such as special boosts. Last of the support skills is sneak. The higher this skill is, the harder a time enemies will have detecting you, making it easier to land a sneak attack critical, or to steal items from NPCs. Time for the social skills now, starting with speech. Throughout New Vegas you will end up talking with a lot of different NPCs, and many of them will have speech checks for you to pass. These are always just a flat number, indicating what level your speech skill needs to be at in order to successfully pass them. There are skill checks in conversation for pretty much every single other skill as well, but speech has the most by far. And finally we have barter, which dictates buying and selling prices at vendors. With 20 points in barter, you sell your items at 54% of their listed value, and can buy items at 146% of what they're worth. But if you've maxed out the barter skill, then you instead sell items for 90% of their value and buy them for 110%. Now that I've gone over what all the different skills are, I'll now talk about how to raise them both permanently and temporarily. For permanent increases, the major way you will raise your skills is by levelling up. Every time you reach a new level, you will see this screen, which allows you to select a number of different skills to increase. The higher your intelligence, the more skill points you will get to spend. On top of this, at the start of a game, you will get to tag 3 different skills, increasing each of them by 15 and giving you a nice little boost to get started. The last way to raise your skill permanently is by reading skill books. These are books you will find all over the Mojave, and each of them increases a certain skill by 3 points, or by 4 if you picked up the comprehension perk. When it comes to temporary increases, there's a huge number of skill boosting items in the game, though they're nearly all either consumable aid items or pieces of apparel. Many different armour pieces come with skill increases listed on them, meaning you gain their bonus as long as you're wearing them. You also can find skill magazines, which by default will give you a 10-point skill increase to one skill, which can be very handy for passing skill checks. It's now time to go over perks, though first I actually want to cover traits. These are special kinds of perks which you can only pick up at the very start of a game, and typically come with both a positive and a negative effect. You are allowed to pick 1, 2, or no traits at all, meaning you do have the option of skipping over traits entirely if none of them take your fancy. However, there are a few traits I think are especially worth considering, so I'll mention them here. The first is good-natured. This will increase your speech, medicine, repair, science, and barter skills all by 5, but reduce all of your combat skills by 5 as well. While this is a net zero change to your skills overall, it almost always works out to your advantage, as just about every character will only really want to focus on 1 or maybe 2 combat skills, but all those other skills will come in handy to some degree, leading to an overall better starting layout. If you'd rather not sacrifice any of your skills, then I'd recommend taking a look at Skilled, which increases all of your skills by 5. The downside is that you get 10% or less experience whenever you gain XP. While this certainly is a downside, considering that New Vegas has a level cap and reaching it isn't too tricky, I always consider this a pretty solid choice for making a strong all-rounder build. My final recommended trait would be Wild Wasteland. While every other trait has clear benefits and penalties, this has neither. Instead, this will add some Easter eggs to the game and make some minor changes to a few events and locations. This doesn't make too drastic a change for the most part, but it will add in a couple of different unique weapons, but also remove a unique weapon from the game too. All in all though, it's not going to make too drastic of a change to your character. With traits gone over, let's now get on to the actual perks themselves, starting with how you get them. At level 2, after increasing your skills, you will then be presented with this screen, showing you several different perks you can unlock. Every perk has level requirements, and may also come with special or skill requirements too, meaning you'll always be working with somewhat limited options on what you can pick. Once you level up again and reach level 3, you'll be given a nasty surprise, as after increasing your skills, you won't get the choice to pick a perk. Fallout New Vegas only lets you pick perks on even levels, and combined with a level cap, this severely limits how many perks you can end up with. With just the base game, you have a level cap of 30, meaning a maximum of 15 perk choices. Each of the 4 story DLCs add 5 to the level cap, so if you're playing the complete edition of the game, then you instead have a level cap of 50 and a total of 25 perks you could pick. Fortunately, there is one other way to gain perks, and that is by completing challenges. As you play, you will occasionally notice that you're being rewarded for doing the same thing over and over again. If you drink water 100 times, then all future water will heal you 50% more. If you kill 50 insects, then you get a 3% damage increase when facing bugs in the future. For the most part, challenge perks aren't something most players will focus on, but instead something that will tick up in the background, passively making you marginally stronger the longer you play. With all the stats for your character covered, let's now go over the equipment they'll be relying on to survive in the post-apocalypse. To start, let's go over weapons, which have a whole host of information to cover when looking at them in your inventory. Damage, weight, and value are all fairly self-explanatory, with these numbers showing you how powerful the weapon is, how much space it uses up in your inventory, and how many caps the item is worth. The damage number will also switch to showing you DPS, which tells you how much damage per second the weapon can dish out. Underneath these numbers, you'll see the condition of your item, along with what type of ammo it uses. The ammo section is another one which shouldn't really require any explanation, but the condition bar is something which could do with a little explaining. This rectangular bar shows you how well maintained your weapon is. If you keep your equipment above the little indent, highlighting the 75% condition mark, then your weapon will deal maximum damage and work just the way it's intended to. If your weapon ever drops below this marker, then the damage will reduce and it may start to jam, making reloads take a fair sight longer. To keep your weapon repaired, you can fix it up in your inventory by pressing the maintain or repair button listed in the top right corner of the Pip-Boy, or you can pay an NPC to fix your weapons for you. There's two more bits of information to take note of when looking at weapons in your Pip-Boy. Above the damage, weight and value numbers, you'll see a symbol with a number on the left hand side and a strength number on the right. The number on the right lets you know how many points of strength you need to effectively wield the weapon. You can still use weapons that you don't meet the strength requirement for, but will suffer a significant accuracy penalty, making it a lot harder to line up shots or hit an enemy inside of VATS. The icon on the left side will indicate what weapon skill the chosen weapon covers, and let you know how high that skill needs to be to wield the weapon without an accuracy penalty. As an example, the medicine stick here requires the character to have at least 6 points of strength and a maxed out gun skill of 100, or else it will become drastically less accurate. If we now take a look at the apparel screen, we'll see a lot of the same information. However, damage has been replaced with DT, or damage threshold. There's some complicated background formula that goes on with this stat, but the simple way to look at it is that it's the amount of damage you reduce attacks by. If you have a total of 15 damage threshold, and an enemy attack would normally deal 20 damage to you, then instead it would only make you lose 5 health. This is the basic way it works, with higher DT meaning you take less damage from all attacks. You can only reduce an attack by 80% of its overall power at maximum though, which means that a high DT doesn't allow you to entirely ignore weak attacks, just mitigate them. Just like with weapons, we have a condition bar, and if this starts to drop under the marking, then the DT it provides will decrease. Next to this will be the word light, medium or heavy. This isn't typically going to be a real concern for you, but there are some perks which interact with certain armour weights, and you may notice yourself moving slightly slower with heavy armour, so it's sometimes worth taking note of this. Underneath this will be the effects bar, telling you what stat modifiers the item confers. These will typically be either skill or special boosts, granting you these bonuses while wearing the piece of apparel. Throughout the game you will find various unique weapons and armour, which are typically much stronger than their base variant. These items will have a different, more noticeable name than the base models, and generally higher stats too. If you're playing on the full Game of the Year edition, then you'll be given a host of powerful uniques before you've even made your character, but for all other unique items you'll have to hunt them down yourself. If you'd like a hand with that, then my buddy Kato Genesis has made videos going over where to find every unique item in Fallout New Vegas, so check those out if you're wanting to know how to find the best equipment in the game. I'm now going to talk briefly about aid items. These are the consumables in your inventory that you'll use to heal yourself, gain temporary stat buffs, or even permanent buffs from skill books. Clicking one of these items will use it up and provide the effect shown, so there's not really much for me to say here. The items simply do what they say. I will take a moment to recommend stocking up on and hotkeying Sunset Sarsaparilla though. This is a very common item found throughout the Mojave, which will heal you over time, and every time you drink one, you either gain a standard bottle cap or a Sunset Sarsaparilla cap, either giving you a little extra money to work with, or progressing a hidden quest. I'm not going to worry much about going over the miscellaneous items in this guide, they're mostly just crafting components or junk. If you know an item's going to be used for crafting, then keep hold of it. Otherwise, you'll typically just want to sell it to clear up some space. Ammo, on the other hand, is incredibly valuable and weightless, unless playing on the added hardcore difficulty mode. This section in your inventory lets you see all the ammo you've collected, which is nice and straightforward, but what I want to bring up here are alternate ammo types. Most of the ranged weapons you encounter will have a default ammo type, but also come with some special types of ammo with different effects. As an example of a couple of them, there are hollow point rounds which do extra damage against enemies with low levels of armour, and then there's armour piercing rounds, which deal less base damage but have greater armour penetration, making them the ideal choice when facing a tough foe with strong defences. You'll never need to change ammo types if you don't want to worry about that, but it's worth taking a look at the different ammo types your favoured weapons have, so that you know what sort of tools you can tackle combat with. While most of the items you get your hands on will be found while out adventuring, you can also craft many different items, provided you have the right components, skill ranking, and know-how. In this section, I'll go over the 3 different crafting stations and cover the basics of how crafting itself works. First up, we have the workbench. At this station, you can build a wide variety of items, including several weapons, healing items, and energy ammo. I'll pause the screen here in order to go over all the elements a bit more clearly. On the left hand side, we have a list of all potential crafting recipes. The things you can craft will automatically go to the top of the list, so you only need to scroll down if you're wanting to check what you need to craft something else. At the bottom here we have the item itself, and from here you can typically see some useful stats as to what you're about to craft. At minimum, the weight and value of the item. On the right hand side we have the skill requirements and what items you need to spend to craft your new item. Skill requirements mean you need a certain level of that skill before you are able to craft the item. Even if you have all the components of a doctor's bag, you won't be able to make one unless you also have a medicine skill of 40 or higher. Just below that are the ingredients, which are the items you need to have in your inventory in order to make the new item. These ingredients will be used up upon crafting the new item, but normally this means sacrificing useless junk in order to make a useful item, so nothing too much to worry about here. If you want to use energy weapons, explosives, or just like having a healthy surplus of medicine, but it can be worth taking your time to look at a workbench, as this crafting station is where you can craft various of these items. The reloading bench is up next, and this is where you can craft ballistic ammo. In order to craft ballistic ammo, you'll typically need the correct bullet or shell casing, lead, powder, and primer. These are not commonly found items while out and about, and in order to find them at all, you'll typically need to either buy these items, or use the reloading bench to break down ammo you already have in order to get the core components of that bullet. When you break down a piece of ammunition, you'll get slightly less than the materials that are required to craft it. For example, breaking down a .308 round will reward you with 1 .308 casing, 15 lead, 4 rifle powder, and 1 large rifle primer. However, to craft a .308 round, you would need all of that as well as 2 more lead and 1 more rifle powder. In theory, this bench should be used in order to break down the ammo you don't want to use and then try and repurpose it into bullets that you do make use of, but honestly, the system's a little too clunky to make real good use out of it. If you're new to the game, then I'd actually recommend avoiding this bench entirely. If you need more ammo for your main weapon and have other types of ammunition to spare, then you'll typically be better off just selling your unwanted ammo to buy the bullets you'll actually use. Finally, we have the campfire, which is probably the crafting station you'll be able to make the most use of. Campfires can be found all over the wasteland, and from them you can make a huge variety of aid items. Typically, you'll be cooking up food from animals that you've killed or plants that you've harvested, turning a weak aid item into a much stronger one. For example, basic gecko meat restores 1 health per second for 5 seconds, adds 3 rads, and reduces your strength by 1 point for 2 minutes. But if you cook it at a campfire, then it will no longer reduce your strength, only give you 1 rad rather than 3, and grant a total of 45 hit points rather than just 5. That's a pretty great upgrade, turning a terrible healing item into one that's pretty decent, and will become even stronger with a higher survival skill. The campfire can make a huge number of healing mills, and even a few armor pieces, so I'd highly recommend interacting with these whenever you find them. We're now at the final section, where I'm basically just going to go over anything important which didn't fit neatly into the previous parts. The first thing I want to mention is Hardcore Mode. This is an optional difficulty modifier you will be presented with after creating your character, one that adds in the need to eat, drink and sleep. If you're a New Vegas veteran, then these added mechanics aren't much of a struggle to overcome, but if you're a new player, then this is going to make things notably harder. On your first playthrough, I would recommend sticking with the standard game mode, but if you end up finding yourself wanting more of a challenge, or just want some added realism, then this option can make for a fun future playthrough. Next up, I want to talk about VATS, or the Fault Assisted Targeting System. This is something I've referenced throughout the video, and if you've played other Fallout games then you'll be somewhat familiar already, but for those new to the franchise, here's a quick overview. By pressing the VATS button, you will freeze time and be able to target enemies with a sequence of attacks. How many attacks you can perform depends upon the weapon you're wielding and your total number of action points. Action points are determined by your agility stat, and are spent when attacking inside of VATS, and regen over time. If you're using a ranged weapon, then that will let you select different body parts of an enemy, allowing you to target their weak spot or cripple a limb. If using a melee or an armed weapon, then you'll only be able to select your target as a whole, but you will deal extra damage inside of VATS. Additionally, damage you take inside of VATS is reduced slightly, making you a little tougher while the animations play out. As you do things around the wasteland, you will sometimes see a notification pop up, telling you that you've gained or lost karma. This is the game telling you if you're currently being a good or bad person, and you can check your overall karma level in your Pip-Boy. Karma has very little effect on the game at all, with only a few points in the game changing at all based on your karma, so this really isn't an important stat to worry about, but I thought it worth bringing up as the game will judge you as you play. What actually does matter is faction reputation. As you progress through the story of New Vegas, you will encounter a host of different factions, each with their own goals. If you help out a faction, then you will gain reputation with them, but if you go against them in some way, then you lose reputation instead. Being on the good side of factions tends to have a variety of different benefits, such as unlocking quests, getting better prices from merchants, and sometimes even being given equipment for free. However, negative reputation can lead to a number of downsides, such as certain followers refusing to accompany you, and potentially the whole faction turning hostile, with their members attempting to kill you on sight. This means you'll generally be wanting to keep factions on your good side, but many are opposed to one another, which means you'll sometimes need to make a tough call on who to side with in the end. If you go all out with helping the NCR, then Caesar's Legion aren't going to be all that fond of you. If you do end up with a lot of bad reputation with a faction who you still want to work with, then you can still approach them if you wear some of their faction armour. This is essentially you dressing up in their specific faction armour to make yourself look like one of their regular members, allowing you to integrate yourself a bit easier. Do be wary with wearing faction armour though, as if you show up in front of NCR soldiers while wearing Legion armour, then they'll assume you're the enemy and open fire right away. The last thing I want to cover in this guide are companions. There are a total of 8 different companions you can travel with in the base game, each with their own story, affiliations, and personality. Travelling with a follower has a number of benefits, as they can carry items for you, assist in combat, and even have their own quests for you to undertake, which typically improve their follower perks in some way. What are follower perks, you ask? They're an additional temporary perk you get while travelling with a follower. In the footage here, I'm travelling with Eddie, an iBot who grants me the Enhanced Sensors perk, making enemies show up sooner on the compass, and allowing me to target invisible enemies inside of VATS. Each companion has their own perk, and some of them can be really powerful. And speaking of powerful, followers in general are pretty damn strong. All of them are essential, so will simply be knocked down if their hit points empty in a fight, and then get back up once the danger has passed. But while they're conscious, they'll do their best to assist you in a fight, and against most early and even mid-game enemies, your followers will be able to win one-on-one fights entirely on their own, even if you've not given them any stronger equipment to use. If you want to make the game substantially easier for yourself, then finding the right follower will do this faster than just about anything else. That was my ultimate beginner's guide for Fallout New Vegas. I hope you enjoyed it, and those of you who are jumping into the game for the first time ahead of Season 2 of the Fallout TV show end up having a great time playing. If you found this video helpful, then please do leave a like, feel free to subscribe and browse my channel in order to see even more Fallout content, and, as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.